There was a former Undersecretary of Defense who was invited to give a speech at a large conference, about 1,000 people. And he was standing on the stage with his cup of coffee in a styrofoam cup, giving his prepared remarks with his PowerPoint behind him. And he took a sip of his coffee and he smiled and he looked down at the coffee. And then he went off script. And he said, last year I spoke at this exact same conference. Last year I was still the undersecretary. And when I spoke here last year, they flew me here business class. And when I arrived at the airport, there was somebody waiting for me to take me to my hotel. And they took me to my hotel and they had already checked me in and they just took me up to my room. And the next morning I came downstairs and there was someone waiting in the lobby to greet me and they drove me to this here same venue. They took me through the back entrance and took me into the green room and handed me a cup of coffee in a beautiful ceramic cup. He says, I'm no longer the undersecretary. I flew here coach. I took a taxi to my hotel and I checked myself in. When I came down the lobby this morning, I took another taxi to this venue. I came in the front door and found my way backstage, and when I asked someone, do you have any coffee? He pointed to the coffee machine in the corner, and I poured myself a cup of coffee into this here styrofoam cup. He says the lesson is, the ceramic cup was never meant for me. It was meant for the position I held. I deserve a styrofoam cup. Remember this. As you gain fame, as you gain fortune, as you gain position and seniority, people will treat you better. They will hold doors open for you. They will get you a cup of tea and coffee without you even asking. They will call you sir and ma'am, and they will give you stuff. None of that stuff is meant for you. That stuff is meant for the position you hold. It is meant for the level that you have achieved of leader or success or whatever you want to call it. But you will always deserve a styrofoam cup. Remember that. Remember that lesson of humility and gratitude. You can accept all the free stuff. You can accept all the perks. Absolutely, you can enjoy them. But just be grateful for them and know that they're not for you.
What I recognize was so often in business we have these competitors, sometimes on our own teams, that we want to beat them. We've all had the experience where one of our colleagues got a promotion and we got upset. We got angry. We got angry at somebody else's success. Think about that for a second. Why couldn't we share in the joy, right? What is it about them that's being revealed in us? That's the problem, right? And so having worthy rivals instead of competitors. Competitors are other players we set out to beat. But the problem with that is there's no finish line. And so if we're obsessed with beating the other company, then at some point, sure, you're ahead in whatever metric you chose. Until when, right? At what expense? At what cost? That's not sustainable. But rather, the other players inside our industry, outside our industry, on our own teams, we can choose our own worthy rivals. Their strengths reveal to us our weaknesses, and by having our weaknesses revealed to us, it means we have the opportunity to grow and improve. And the infinite game, at its core, is basically a game of constant improvement. And so our worthy rivals reveal to us our weaknesses and our opportunities to improve. Everybody, the vast majority, should get to wake up and say, I love my job. It is a right. It is a God-given right that we should love where we work. And we should demand it. We should demand that our leaders provide an environment in which we want to come, where we want to care about each other, where we feel safe to express our vulnerabilities and our fears and our concerns, that we're open to correction and discipline and feedback, that we're not defensive, because we know that it's being given to help us improve and grow. And we want to improve and grow. And in turn, we will help others improve and grow. Because when we feel safe, when we feel that our leaders care more about us than a number, they care more about our lives and our confidence and our joy and our skill set, more than some short-term gain, that they care more about our priorities than the priorities of some disinterested external constituency, then we will respond in kind and we will offer our blood and our sweat and our tears, and we will make sacrifices of all kinds to see that our leader's vision is advanced and that this company continues to thrive, not for them, for ourselves. It becomes deeply personal and becomes something we love contributing to. I talk about it all the time. Working hard for something we don't care about is called stress. Working hard for something we love is called passion. And I'm tired of listening to CEOs saying, we only hire passionate people. You don't even know what that means. How do you know that they're passionate for interviewing and not passionate for working? You know, every person on the planet has passion, right? We just don't all have passion for the same things. Give me something to believe in. Give me something to believe in. Give me the opportunity to contribute to something. Allow me to make mistakes and try again.
Most leaders will either experience an existential flex once, maybe twice, sometimes never in a career. I never expected that every leader would be facing it simultaneously. But the principles are still the same, whether we're all going through it together or not. Which is, it's not about the daily flexibility of business. This is profound, 180-degree strategic shift. I'll give you my favorite example. In the late 1970s, Apple's already a successful company. They've already come off the success of the Apple I, the Apple II. Steve Jobs is already a famous CEO. And understand, Apple had a just cause. They had a vision, a very clear vision, which is they wanted to empower individuals to stand up to incumbent power. They wanted to empower individuals to stand up to Big Brother, this revolutionary spirit. And if you remember, that's what they stood for, right? The computer revolution. They were one of the leaders of the computer revolution.
Yep.
And Jobs and a few of his senior executives, as executives do, went and visited another company, and they got a tour of Xerox Park, which is Xerox's R&D division. And Xerox showed them something they invented called the graphic user interface, which allowed a computer user to click a mouse and move a cursor across a desktop to use icons to work the computer. Now, this is a profound technology because prior to that, you had to learn a computer language. So, driven by the idea that one day an individual will be able to compete against a corporation, Jobs sees this new technology and goes back to his team and says, we have to invest in this graphic user interface thing. He sees it as a leapfrog technology to advance their vision. And one of the leaders who was there that day said, we can't. We've already invested millions of dollars and countless man hours in a completely different strategic direction. If we go down that path, we will blow up our own company. To which Jobs actually said, better we should blow it up than someone else. Well, that decision led to the Macintosh, a computer user operating system so profound that the entire software of Windows is designed to act like a Macintosh. And the reason a computer is now a household appliance was because of their willingness to make that profound strategic shift. And so the reason leaders usually don't make an existential flex is because they're too afraid of the short-term losses. They're too afraid of the disruption, even if they sometimes see it as necessary. One of my favorite examples of a failure was Blockbuster. Blockbuster was the only significant national video rental chain. They were the 800-pound gorilla. And this little company called Netflix showed up and saw the rise of the internet and the potential for streaming in the future. The technology wasn't quite there yet, but everybody knew it was coming. But they started experimenting with an entirely new business model called subscription. And if you remember, you could get the DVDs and keep them for as long as you wanted, and then send them back. And the CEO of Blockbuster at the time went to the board and said, I think we really need to experiment with subscription. And the board would not allow him because the company made 12% of their revenues from late fees. They were so afraid to give up 12% of revenues that they literally committed an act of suicide. Blockbuster doesn't exist, and Netflix is determining the future of television and movies. Now, they will say the internet put them out of business. Nonsense. They put themselves out of business. And so we're seeing that right now in COVID as well. There are companies that are desperately clinging to their old business models, but this marketplace, if you're not willing to pivot, the marketplace will put you out of business. And so we're seeing wonderful disruption happening, positive disruption, taking advantage of COVID to make changes that they see highly necessary, where they may not have made these changes prior because they were just too afraid.